Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode on the 914 Ferrari here at the Red Barn. And this time we're going to talk about the radiator system for this thing. How cool is that? One of the valid criticisms of these water-cooled 914s is you give up a lot of the storage space. In the case of this particular car, with everything I've done in the back, I've given up all the storage space. But, you know, big radiators, you know, it's not practical. Hot air, it's gone. And so in thinking about the 914 Ferrari build, I don't think I've shown you this yet, but this car was being prepared for a 3.6 liter 911 air-cooled motor. The bigger late model 911 motors pretty much require an oil cooler up front. And you can see that this car, the bumper was cut. This is the GT, the classic GT 914 GT opening. The valance is trimmed down, and then an oil cooler bolts right in here. Now what this guy did, the guys who prepped this car, were doing, again, fairly common, the louvered floor, and then the oil cooler gets a shroud, and that vents the hot air out the bottom of the car. So that was already done when the chassis arrived here. But what you can see is, I'm not going to be able to cool this 400 horsepower Ferrari engine with a, what does this work out to be? I think I measured this at 5x24. I could fit a 5x24 radiator in here, which certainly isn't going to be enough. But let me just make this point. If I put this back in here, imagine if there was a way, look how nice that floor is. I mean, imagine if there was a way to take advantage of what's underneath that space for part of a radiator, and then find other places to put other radiators. Now you might be thinking, you mean like in the back, in the trunk area, or in the engine compartment? And the answer is no. And here we're going to walk outside and we're going to see one of the parts cars. Now, don't feel bad for it. It looks okay from 5 feet, but when you really look at it closely, it's rusty everywhere. It's been hit in the front. The frame rails are, these support structures are wrinkled. It's rusty everywhere, and horribly rusty. So this is a donor car at this point. Why am I showing you this? Well, having paid attention to the Porsche Boxsters and Caymans, the late 911s, the water-cooled 911s, they all carry the radiators in front of the front wheels and, at an angle, radiators and fans. And so what I think I can do, and I started in on it, is I started dissecting the front of this car, having taken a couple of measurements, and noticed that, if I were to reshape the front of the fender well, you can see that if I put a radiator in here, and I use the 914 bumper fog light opening, and then open up another grill opening in the valance, I can, create an air ducting system to get that intake air to a radiator, and just like the late model cars, use this as the cooling setup. And what that would mean is one on each side, in conjunction, if it even is necessary, once I get the dimensions and figure out if I've got the cooling volume that I need, I can run a custom, like I said, 5x24 radiator, central radiator, which they do in the Boxsters and 911s and Caymans as an upgrade. And I think I can generate enough cooling surface for the Ferrari motor. And what that would mean is I would have the entire front trunk. Well, the entire front trunk. I'd have most of the front trunk. So what you're going to see here is I'm going to give a go to opening this up so I can get accurate measurements, and then go see if I can find, an existing radiator and fan setup that can work, or, measure up and determine how much it might cost to have a custom radiator built, one for each side and one in the center if needed. So that may go nowhere. It may be the solution. And now that you kind of see what I'm up to, now you can appreciate just how big a difference that would make to usability of the car. Now granted, I'd have to, seal this area off, and seal this area off. And one of the things I didn't mention was, which is a key element, is when you measure level from the top of the bumper back, believe it or not, I end up with just over 3 inches of free clear space here. And there are companies like Hella that make DOT approved LED high beams and low beams. In the case of the ones I'm looking at, they're 60 millimeters. There's these little teeny lights. And I think I can, reform this panel and mount the lights here, so the headlight bucket cover would still fit. And because the light beam is that much lower, it would only have to raise up, like maybe, this high. It wouldn't go all the way up to expose that factory, 7-inch seal beam that the 914 has. So we shall see. But that's the latest sort of thinking on what I might try to make work for this car. It has to be proven out to work because I'm not going to cut up this chassis until I know for sure that that's a workable solution. So it's going to be a minute before I get to that, but I'm going to get to it. So cooling for a 914, because how nice would that be to have a 400 horsepower water-cooled 914 with that much trunk space in the front. Super cool. So big time opened up, and again, I may have gone too far on some of this, but I just wanted to get all the clearance I needed while trying to preserve, what I might be able to preserve. This is just sheet metal that's been cut out. Not really a lot of structure, although the support brace, you 914 guys would know there's a support brace that welds to the outside of the fender here, so that would need a strut. But I'm gonna have to build a radiator frame, something that the radiator can bolt to, and I suspect that I can just mount something off of it back to a pickup point on the fender to recreate that support. But now you can see why I think this might work, and forget the rough trimness of some of this stuff. Let me move you around here. That's kind of is that sort of almost the straight on shot. It looks like maybe like a 12 by, or a 10 by 12 radiator in there, maybe more. And as I mentioned, the fog light grill becomes an intake, a valance opening becomes an intake. Now certainly I don't have this much, but I think I have plenty. And I'm gonna do, try to maybe figure out the square inch comparison between the radiator that's in the LS and how many square inches of surface area I can get out of this and see. But I'm encouraged by this. Okay, so after a bit of measuring and a little bit more clearancing, I just used this fabulous old box to make a 10 by 12 mock-up of a potential sort of sized radiator. And what you can see starts to happen is this is the factory brace, and because the typical, I'm not a radiator expert, but a 2-core radiator is usually like about 3+ inches, which is about what this is. And you can see with the fan back there, it's going to be a little bit tight with the tire. So what I think I'm going to do is, just as a proof of concept, again, this is a throwaway chassis. I'm actually going to cut back to here, and I'm going to remove this piece. And I think what's going to happen is, this is the factory shape of the nose, and what I think will work is, if this is made to maybe only be like 9 inches tall, make it a little bit lower, and if I bring this wall, this support structure, instead of straight forward, if I bring it in to here, I pick up like 4 more inches in this space, and I can make like a 9 by 16 radiator that then sits, a little bit less angled, because the noses on the, the late model cars that run the radiators like this are much longer than the 914. This thing's got very little overhang on the front, which means it's a little bit problematic to try to get this radiator to sit at a, you know, at an angle that, well, there's just no room. So anyway, I'm gonna go after moving this back to the straight section here, and then this will just come over. So let me go after that. If I can get it into about that position, it adds like 4 or 5 inches to the width of the radiator. And then, as I say, this would, you know, the inner fender would then come back into here, and now I got the vent, you know, all the air exit is going back out under the wheel well, which is like what they do in all these other cars. So I think if this is going to end up with a corner radiator, it's going to have to be something like this. Well, okay, there's a bunch more clearancing, and my scientific cardboard box method here suggests that I trimmed this down to 9 inches just to make it so I could, you know, move the thing around in here and, you know, kind of work the angles. And it looks like if I were to sort of place it about like that, I can extend it out to about 15 inches over there. But, you know, there would be potentially the corner radiators. Obviously some tidying up needs to be done. But, you know, it's a pretty big, I mean, it's a pretty big modification. So I don't know if I'm actually going to have the nerve to do it to the Ferrari chassis. I'll have to see how it comes together when I start trying to mock up the closure. And we'll work it from there. Okay, well, I really went to town on clearancing stuff just to get everything out of the way. So you can see there's just nothing left here. So clearly a bunch more structure is going to have to be put back in this, but I just want to make sure that I understand what room I have. And what's turning out to be the case is, the real issue is, and it's tough to do on video, but you can see that the radiator, I can't do it this way. The fan's not going to fit with the tire clearance and all that other stuff. So it's looking to me like the best way to do this is I open this up a whole bunch more towards the center of the car, because in doing the math, I found some dimensions on the Ferrari radiator, and even though it's a single core on the stock 360 radiator, it's got a fair bit of surface area, so I'm sort of scared to not have an equivalent amount. With this pushed over pretty much as far as it's going to be able to go, this is my, again, scientific box, I can get what appears to be, if I kind of come around here, having opened this up to about this far, but I think I can get what appears to be an 18-inch wide, 10-inch tall radiator in here per side. And I can get a second radiator in this middle section as well. And if I run you back over to the Ferrari car, the radiators would come into about here. And then if I ran an angled, it looks like I could get like a 7-inch tall structure in here, tipped at a slight angle, and still use this floor, duct it back down, you know, use the floor that's in here. And even if I had to bop it up a little bit to just duct it, you know, right back down and out here. The other thing that I didn't really make a point of is I'm going to pull this other panel out of here. And again, previous work that was done for a battery box. This bulkhead is completely not stock, right? So I could remove this if I so needed. And, you know, or use it as a smuggler's box, you know, maybe keep it as a smuggler's box. I don't know, I might even actually put the battery there, we shall see. But you can see there's a whole bunch of room in here that if I had a central radiator, I can duct it and still save all this floor space and gain even more, maybe, or rather trunk space, and gain even more depending upon what I do back here. So, if we go back to the black car, but you can see now I have this gigantic opening for airflow, which I'm absolutely positively committed to needing. But the regular sized grill opening, it's nowhere near the same size as what's going on behind here. Now remember, we're still talking about opening up a hole in the valance. So even if I did this wide, I'm all about making sure I have plenty of room. So what I did was I started modeling other shapes, and I just worked up this silly little grill to give an idea of, you know, would that look okay? Because there's so much of a design element of the width of this grill coming up, going into the width of the headlight buckets that, you know, I'm no car designer, but it's a real risk when you start changing key elements of a car design like that. But I think, and I'll show you a couple mock-up pictures here. Here's one that I just did some horrible photo chopping with MS Paint to just kind of show you, or to try to get an idea of, you know, if I just extended the grill over and made it wider to pick up more air inlet, you know, do I like it with the wide part on the top, like on what I've got modeled here on the LS car, or like I like it with the wide part on the bottom? And that's really, you know, you can go a couple of different ways. I'm just still noodling on the idea of, you know, is this gonna work? Is it gonna work cooling wise? And then is it gonna look okay aesthetically? And the other thing, the other fun thing is, remember, with the headlight bucket now gone, I only got this much space-ish for some lights. So, oh, the other thing that happened was, it turns out that those 60mm Hella LEDs are DOT legal, DOT M, which is motorcycles. And apparently motorcycles don't require the same amount of light output. I'm no light expert either, but I'm getting an education on all kinds of stuff. So anyway, what I had lying around, of all things, from a buddy's race car that he got rid of, were these 90mm halogens that are like full-on DOT car legal. And they put out a boatload of light, apparently. Like, these are actually legit good headlights. And I just mocked up this wacky little mounting bracket for a second. And interestingly, this is a horrible demo, but they fit in this space under the headlight bucket. Now, what they don't fit is, they're too big straight on from the front of the car. They're too big to have the light beam get over the top of the bumper. So what this is going to require is some kind of pop-up. And that's going to be the next thing to try to noodle up, is how do I stow these things and have them still be able to come up high enough? So so there's all kinds of crazy stuff I'm going to have to work out to make this happen, assuming that I want to keep the stock looking 914 headlight bucket, which I do. You know, I could run, you know, CB makes those hood lights, the rally hood lights that you've seen on a bunch of different Porsches, but that so changes the look of the car. I'd really love to keep the stock looking headlight bucket setup. So I think it's going to come back to, can I come up with something attractive, and can I make the headlights work? And yes, I could probably get away with those 60mm motorcycle headlights and probably no one would notice, you know, but I'd really rather have it be completely legal and do the extra work to make that happen. So that's it this time, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Like and subscribe, make a comment, do all that great stuff, and we will see you next time at the Red Barn. Y'all take care now. Bye-bye.